Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to the Pursuit of Badasserie, the podcast. As always, we have another incredible guest with us today. Today we have Sandy Joy Weston. Lynn, tell us all about her.
Yes, Sandy is a keynote speaker, TEDx speaker. Can't wait to talk a little bit about that. International podcaster, 3 times published author, an entrepreneur who has owned and operated health and wellness companies for over 30 years. Early in her career, she became the first female trainer for the Philadelphia Flyers and spent many years as a media personality. You'll soon see why. And as a Philadelphia NBC 10's fitness expert. She created the national recognized Philly Street Line dance to help combat Philly's fattest city label. For the past 5 years, Sandy has been focusing on SJW Productions, an international company whose main mission is to highlight all the positive in the world. She is incredible. She does this also through her books, Train Your Head and Your Body Will Follow, My 30-Day Reset Journal, and her programs and workshops. Sandy's mission is to spread pure joy and inspire others to see their true power. Welcome, Sandy. I'm so excited. We're so excited to have you.
I'm so excited that we met. I was like, wait a minute. There's 2 of you? There's Amanda and Lynn in the house? What?
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about you that we already haven't shared in the bio.
Well, what you didn't say is that I went to school on a dance scholarship thinking I was going to be a dance instructor, which was awesome, and own eventually a dance studio. But life's journey took me in another direction. When I realized I sucked wad compared to the other girls on Broadway, and I'm like, wait, I can't do that. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not drinking. I'm not smoking. I'm not doing drugs. And here these people are, coming out, practicing an hour. They were so much better. So I took a year off. And in my journey, I realized I loved studying how the mind and body worked. And that took me on a direction of teaching aerobic and fitness classes for my internship. And I met the who's who of Philly. And it just led me down this whole other path of, hey, I'm going to start an in-home training business, which led to, hey, why don't you open a gym? I'm like, wait a minute, that's a good idea. So here's Sandy Weston, who was thinking she was going to dance on Broadway, ended up being an entrepreneur. Who would think? Who would think?
Well, you made up for it in personality, Sandy. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Come on.
Listen, I didn't have the highest kicks, but I would be like, Showtime. I'd come out. They're like, wait a minute. It's a chorus line. We don't want to see your personality. I'm like, well, that's a bummer.
Yeah,
so
for real.
That's for sure. We can't all be professional dancers with high kicks and incredible hamstring flexibility. It's fine. We shine in other ways.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, you and Amanda actually have a lot in common because she was in the fitness world, a dancer, all this other.
Oh.
Yeah. So I know we've
Don't get so excited when you say that. No, I was a subpar dancer at best, but yes. So I feel like we have similar beginnings in the fitness world and working on that fitness facility and starting a gym and just going for it full throttle. But, I know that we're supposed to work up to this, but I do what I want. So I really want to talk about your TED Talk. Tell everybody about your TED Talk.
Okay. So can we go back just a little bit?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Take us on a journey.
It's a journey. So during COVID, you can't travel, right? And speak around the world. So I thought, what the heck am I going to do? So I decided to take this almost year-long course in heroic public speaking to up my keynote gigs. All right. It was phenomenal. It was amazing. I didn't know what I didn't know. During that time, they said, you should probably also work on a TEDx. And I was like, not right away. But I did. I thought, all right, because you take your 45-minute and you got to make it like a 10-minute. And I thought, oh, you know what? It wasn't on my bucket list, but I have something to say. I really want to get it out there. So I applied a bunch of places, got rejected a bunch of places. And then the universe took over. And I do a show, which I would love to have you ladies on, called Hey, I Got Something to Say. And I highlight women around the world that just might have something to say. I don't know, you two might just fit perfectly. But I started meeting all these people around the world, these women, and they're like, yeah, Cindy, we got something to say. Well, I was interviewing this one woman that I found on LinkedIn for the show. And she was asking a lot of questions. She's like, question after question. And I'm like, Arena, no one's ever asked me this many questions to be on the show. And she goes, what are you talking about? I thought you were interviewing for the TEDx. And I go, yeah, let's go with that one. Let's go with. She's like, well, wait a minute. I go, no. We'll stick with that. You can still be on the show. So then she kept saying, what's your big idea? And I just popped into my head. And she said, we'll get back to it. Well, it took almost another year because there were certain complications with her application at TEDx. She was going to move. But then right before Christmas, she's like, Sandy, we're doing it. You have to reapply. And I got it. And I was like, oh my God, that everyone says, how did you get the TEDx? I go, it's not even the normal way, because all the other applications I got rejected. But this topic was perfect for me because it was called The Brave and the Brilliant. And I just did it in April, the end of April, and it just came out when we're recording this 10 days ago. So it just went live, which is really exciting. And I talk about the shifts you can make in 3 minutes a day or less using movement, words, and laughter. And of course, I act out movement and words and laughter, and I get audience participation. But I think the thing that sold them on the most, and by the way, I didn't tell people this story until the last few years because I just wasn't ready. They just assumed I was wealthy and we talked about this amazing family. But in it, there's this little piece that it wasn't bad enough growing up in the projects, but my mom spent most of her life in mental institutions. So during those visits, it was really depressing. So I had to change the mood. So I'd bring my tap shoes starting at 9 and I would entertain them. And I would go around. Now, keep in mind, I'm 9. I probably shouldn't have been doing this. I'd go around and take their
things we could get away with back when we were younger, before cell phones.
Oh my God. They just let you walk in. And I'd go in with my little kid scissors. It would never cut. They had these little cups of medicine. And I'd go around. You don't need that medicine. Just watch me. I'll bring you joy. Oh my God. I probably did. And then I push the boombox and throw my tap shoes and dance away before they kicked me out, right? And then I thought, when you look back, some of them really didn't need that medicine. They were poor, misunderstood, but some really didn't need their medicine. But in that moment, it was magical. I could see in a few seconds how I could shift their energy. And I thought, oh my God, they have so much hope. And I have so much hope. I'm going to do this for a living. So that's what my TEDx is based on.
It's so beautiful. And I know on our personal chat, we spoke a little bit more about that and how, first of all, we never know one's journey. And I was actually speaking about this today on a call, with a group from Sweden, and we never know. We project, we assume, we put people up on this pedestal, and we really never know the journey that one has been on. And I was reflecting on this, and Amanda and I have written a few books as well, and I just came out with the memoir, nonlinear autobiography, whatever. But even with that, it's only a small smidgen of my journey, and to be able to share little nuggets and to knock ourselves off the pedestal and to be able to show others exactly what you used to do when you were 9 years old, you did on that stage at TEDx, to just kind of allow your truth to shine and to give glimmers of hope and light to people who need it. And that's exactly what you're doing as a 9-year-old, tap dancing your little heart out.
Stealing people's meds.
Do you say drinking meds?
Stealing people's meds.
Stealing people's meds. All the things we could do when we were young. Isn't that hilarious?
Honestly, I'm surprised all of us are still alive. Some of the things that we did and
Absolutely.
right. That is a wonderful origin story of your TEDx. I mean, obviously, but one thing I really want to point out is how many times did you fail to get that TEDx? How many times did you fail to get the TEDx?
So many applications. And then it came to me in the weirdest way ever. Who knew?
Yeah. And I think that's such a lesson.
Yeah.
Because people give up way too soon and they take the no as the end thing and they just assume that, oh, I tried once and I guess it didn't work out and I guess I'm not meant to do that. And if you really want something, you go for it. And it's not always going to be handed to you just because you want it. I think that people forget that. They forget that gumption and tenacity that you need sometimes to really get what you want.
Back when I first started writing one of my books, it took me a year and a half to get an agent, and then another year and a half for the agent to get a publisher because she got 37 rejections because no one was getting the mind body thing. They thought I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Now they don't.
Oh my God, I haven't heard that.
I mean, it was just crazy. And at the time, the hybrid is really doing great and self-publishing, but it was like not the way to go back then. And so finally, I go to New York. I talk about, okay, she was like, Sandy, all the big ones in New York, 37. I really don't know what else to do. Like, I go, I get it. You tried your best. Maybe I'll self-publish. But then I thought, maybe, just maybe she's not pitching it the right way. So I go to New York City and take a writing course, 4-day writing course for how to pitch to get an agent. But I thought maybe I'll meet people and they'll help me pitch publishers, which I did. So I came back and I said, hey, try this angle. Maybe you want to do it this way. About all it takes is 1 to 3 minutes a day to shift check. And she did. And she said, I got 5 big ones left. And the last one, which was at the time, Skyhorse Publishing, which is now Simon & Schuster, took it. Even my husband is like, why do you go uphill both ways? Sandy, they can't take, me getting rejections. I'm like, I think it bothers you more than me. Like, I'm like, all right, that didn't work out. Okay. And I think I trained myself at a very, very young age that failure to me was not them saying they didn't want me. It was me not trying. And if I don't even put myself out there, that to me is failure. If they don't take me, I don't get it. I'm not looking like I suck wad. Oh, I'm sorry. I think you're allowed to say that. But I think, okay, it's not a match or it's not meant to be right now. And do I still want to do it? If I do, then balls to the walls, I'm going for it. Or maybe I really don't want it.
Or maybe you really don't want it. I want everybody to stop the podcast, rewind it by a minute and listen to that whole section again, because that is a perfect example of how failure is misrepresented and how it can be seen in a different way. I love that. I love it.
Well, and it's part of the process. I mean, we speak about this all the time, and there's so many famous stories, Michael Jordan, KFC, all these other
Oprah,
Oprah, like all these famous people who actually speak about failing more than they succeeded. And it was just that last time, that one time after so many no's and failures that they got that yes. And it's that, like Amanda said, and like you were saying, the tenacity, the hustle. Amanda and I speak a lot about the hustle because we grew up in the same era. And for us, hustle is good. Like we look at it through different lenses from different backgrounds, but I would say the same, in results maybe, or the same kind of energy towards it. Right. So hustle might've had a slightly different, different angle of a fire for each of us, but we believed in putting in the work and showing up, rolling up our sleeves. Okay, that didn't work. What else can we do? And it's interesting because you put yourself in that room to meet other people. You also put yourself into that room for your book, but you also put yourself into that room for your TEDx, right? If you wouldn't have done that course and all of that, like maybe this wouldn't have come. You continue, and even the way, and I don't remember the story exactly, but even the way that you got into owning fitness studios and different things like that, you put yourself in the room. If you don't show up, you don't know what's going to happen. If you are judging the temperature of the water and the current of the water from the shore, you don't know, you're not in the water. You don't know. You're not gonna be able to swim unless you're in the water. Like, get in the water. And I think that that's really important, that you continue to put yourself in positions where you can actually make things happen.
You know, Lynn, I'm so glad you said that, because the other day I was on a podcast and they were talking about if women are going for a job and they have 4 of the 5 qualifications, they're like, yeah, I don't have everything. And if men go for it, I don't know if this is true, they have 1 of the 5 and then like, yeah, I can do it. And I never understood that, you know, women second guessing themselves. I was always, if the opportunity, like the health club, I had not 1 business course, you know, it was all health and science. I had a master's in exercise physiology. But when the right people were there to help me and guide me and presented the opportunity, I thought, ooh, I really want to do that. I can step up, I can learn. And that's what I did. And I took it on. I stepped up to the opportunity, not second guessing. What do you mean? I've never owned a business. I don't know anything about business. I thought, I can learn because I really, really was passionate about it. And there's a difference though. If I wasn't, then I wouldn't have done it, but I was so excited. So when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, okay, that sounds great. Same thing almost with everything. Being on TV, they came over to film an episode because they were short 30 seconds. I did it and they're like, oh, how would you like to be on NBC 10? I'm like, I have no camera experience, but I could learn. And I stepped up to that. And the same thing with the book. Like, how would you like a book? I'm not a very good writer, but I could learn. And everything in my life, once the opportunity presented itself, I really, really wanted to do it. I developed the skills that I needed to, and I would never, ever regretted it. That's why I don't know if that other thing is true, that women do that. Like, wait, I don't have that one thing, so I'm not going after it. But all I have to say is pish, pish, pish. Don't do that anymore.
You know, and I also like about this story of you went and educated yourself and then put that education into action. You took you took the course on speaking and then you really wanted to dive into your TEDx. You took the course on how to pitch and then you pitched. So it's educating, investing in yourself, and then putting that investment into action, and then not letting the naysayers get you down and say that you can't do anything just because you're missing a certain qualification or you might not have as much experience. And I don't necessarily think it's a woman thing, but there's only certain people can fill in those blanks. Because I mean, I'm not trying to make it about me, but I did the same thing the first time I took a television production job. I didn't have any experience. I had a degree, but I had no real world life experience. And they were looking for the complete package. And I just weaseled my way in there with tenacity and the desire to learn it, and then did it. And I don't think that everybody has that. I think I don't think it's mutually exclusive, male or female, but I think only certain people.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Because I was like, I never heard that statistic, because I've been hearing it recently a lot.
Well,
I'm not surprised.
Yes, they do say statistically that because it slightly has to do with a little bit of emotional intelligence and kind of the angle, because both men and women can have high emotional intelligence. It's not gender specific. However, the aspects of the emotional intelligence tend to be kind of segmented. Generalizing here, segmented to the two masculine or the feminine or the male versus female. And so men are a bit more like, don't care as much what people think about them. And again, generalizing. So where women are more nurturing, care a little bit more about like the community and like have a bit more, men suffer from it too, imposter syndrome or whatnot. Naturally, statistically and generally, yes. And there are lots of studies around that. However, what I will say is a couple of things, and I do want you to speak around this because Amanda and I have had this conversation many times, and those that are avid listeners know a little bit about mine and Amanda's backgrounds, and know, that we have fire from very different places. However, that is a fire that's very prevalent in our lives. But and you had a colorful upbringing as well, which I'm sure aided to, like, nobody's going to do it for me. I got to do it for myself. Like, I got to show up. I got to be present. I got to do what I got to do in order to be,
Yeah.
have something. Right. And so I want you to speak a little bit around this because especially in, we've had lots of conversations where people, and I just got back not too long ago from the Philippines and spoke about like resilience and that like agility, but a lot of people nowadays, and I'm not going to say generational, I'm going to say in today's time, because of the ease of things, because of the accessibility of things. And I don't mean life is easy. That's not what I'm saying, but the ease of accessibility and different things. Like a lot of people aren't developing that resilience muscle. They're not using that hustle. In fact, people are calling hustle a bad word. No, hustle is not what you're deeming it to be. It doesn't mean you have to be burning at both ends if you don't want to, unless you want to, but it's about putting in the work and actually doing, like, making that shit happen. And so I want you to talk a little bit about that, because I know we have some listeners, and this is not throwing shade, but that maybe could step up their game a little bit in that particular, because maybe they want different results, but they don't have that, maybe that colorful past to push them. So what would you say to them?
I can't believe you're bringing this up right now, because one of my close friends just said to me, I'm not kidding you. She's like, I think my kids are screwed. I go, what are you talking about? She's like, they had such a great life. She said they don't have grit. And I go, they're not screwed. Calm down, calm down. Everyone has pluses and minuses. Like, let's just look at it. And in this case, yes, they had an amazing, loving childhood and everything they wanted. But here's the difference. She taught them never to take it for granted. These kids appreciate it. They have summer jobs. They know the importance of going out there and, making their own money and not just mom and dad supporting them. So it doesn't have to be that way. I trained clients who were wealthier than crap. Those kids understood making a dollar, because they made it important to them to say, okay, this is my money and I'm willing to help you, but you got to make it on your own. And then I had the complete opposite. And guess what? You're not doing them any favors. You're not doing them any favors, but you don't have to have a crappy, yucky life to have that. You don't. And okay, take for example, I have a client who sent me their 2 young kids. And the reason they sent them to me is exactly what you're talking about. If it's not handed to them because mom and dad didn't give them the job, they think mom and dad are not being good parents. And so I'm sitting there with the young man who goes, yeah, my parents could, get me this job easily, and I could be making $25 an hour for their good friend, but they want me to go out there in my field and do an internship and make peanuts. And I just started laughing. He goes, what's so funny? I go, I think I'm in love with your parents. I mean, forget grit or hustle. They're teaching you to be independent and what you're capable of doing. For me, it's more about how can you possibly know what you're capable of doing unless you put yourself out there? That is what develops for confidence, self-worth. Like liking who you are is all about you seeing, I did that. And you can't develop it if it's always handed to you. But it's not, you don't have to grow up in hardship to develop that. And what I really want is the parents out there to hear, you don't have to just keep giving your kids everything, even though they ask for it. And I think a thing that, not all parents, but what I'm seeing a lot recently is there too much trying to be their kid's friend. And there's that fine line, is you're allowed to say no to the kid before, because you do want them to feel good about who they are. Okay, I'm done. I'll break.
Yeah, I love that. My kids are mid to late 20s, if you could believe, and I raised them as the mom. Like I was their mom, even when I was raising them by myself. And
Yeah,
now we have a very close relationship, and I've always maintained, if anything ever happened, like we'll call me,
absolutely.
we'll deal with it, ask questions later. But and I taught my kids the grit and the, as much as I could, obviously from a very different point of view.
Yeah.
But to like not be handed the fish, but learn how to fish, how to go out there and do it. And we've had so many conversations, because again, they're 26, 27, and 27, about how grateful they are for how, because I would have them in my face. Well, so-and-so has this. I don't give a shit. They're not my kid. Like, I don't care. I'm raising you this way. However, I will say that there were aspects of that from me coming from the childhood that I did that actually prevented me from being as successful as I could be, because I played small, because I actually didn't want to make that much money and then feel guilty for not handing it to my kids. But that's a whole other can of worms. I know I've spoke about it before in different podcasts, but it's interesting, because as parents, we navigate this, but even as, as people of the community, we're navigating this, and I think I love this dialogue. Amanda, I know you wanted to add something. Sorry.
Oh, no, for sure. I mean, I grew up, my son is 6, and so I haven't completely ruined him yet. Still time for that. Still time, but it always makes me laugh, because he will just, oh, Mom, you worked all day. And I'm like, I worked for 1 hour today. And then we went to like Hawaii for a month. Like, what bougie little lifestyle do you have that you think that you have it so hard? And he's just, I mean, he's 6, so it's not like he has a real concept yet, but it always cracks me up. I'm like, do you know like how much struggle there is in the world, and you don't want to, I mean, back in the day, it was always like kids in China aren't eating, so why are you eating your dinner? And I don't want to bring it up the way that was with me, but it blows me away, the kind of this like sense of injustice of the world. Like, oh, my life is so hard. I'm like, is it though? No, you have a pretty cush life, kid. And then, growing up for me, I mean, I grew up much more affluent. And I remember very distinctly the kind of resentment I had from my parents, because they did not buy me a car. They made me pay for college, and I was so bitter about it. I'm like, we have this money, and you're going to, and now I think it was the best thing they ever could have done for me, because I learned the value of a dollar. I mean, while other kids were skipping school, I was like, okay, well, that if I skip this class, that's actually $732. And I can't make $732 this month with my 4 jobs while I'm going through school. Like, I need to sit down and make a decision. What's my priority, going to this stupid party or learning whatever I have to learn? And I made those decisions, as it were, but I would never have been able to have that kind of distinction and prioritization and true understanding of wealth if everything had been handed to me. And I was really bitter about it in my angsty teenage years. And now looking back, it was the best gift my parents gave to me, to learn the value of money and how you actually make a dollar. And I mean, they from a very young age told me I was going to have to pay for things. And before I really was cognizant of money, because I think when I started my babysitting gigs at like 11, they're like, well, yeah, save up your money because you're going to pay for everything. And I didn't know really what money was, but I saved everything, and everything. And that's how I paid for school, was, babysitting and nanny jobs and waitressing and, food eating competitions, and like anything I could do to make a buck to get myself there. So
let's just throw that in there. Food eating competition.
Oh, literally that. I was like, yeah, I could eat a whole pizza. Let's do this. Yeah. No, I mean, anything I could do, anything. I was unrelenting. Just go for it. I'll go for it. And I think that's something, again, if my parents had given me everything that they were capable of giving me growing up, my father's a physician. So growing up in a doctor's household, I would be a totally different person.
Yeah. I just heard a woman the other day talking about that. She switched her son, who's in middle school, to a private school. And their rules are, you can't bail your kid out, meaning if they forget their lunch, you're not allowed to bring it to them. They'll live. If they forget the homework, don't bring it. And that was totally different than the other school. And at first she's like, what? And she's like, no. How are they going to learn that lesson? They are not going to starve. They let them figure it out. And then next time they'll be more aware not to forget. And I'm like, oh my God, I love that school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of lessons. Again, for those of you listening, it's not just a gen or generational thing. It's, there are there are some coincidences or connections, I should say, in the different generations, just because of the way life has evolved. But this is for all ages, those that don't utilize grit and don't hustle. And I mean, Amanda and I talk about it with our clients all the time. And we have people who are just starting their business who might be in their early mid-20s, and we work with people in their 50s, and we have the same, or even maybe a little bit older, but it doesn't matter like what your age is, what generation you are. You're not going to get the results unless you roll up your sleeves, put in the work, understand and build the resilience muscle, and like learn how to fish. Even if you weren't taught how to fish, you were doing, you learn it then. Progress over perfection. Say yes, figure it out later. And I think that's really served Amanda and I as well in our career, is we're like, yep, okay, and then we'll figure it out. Now, some of it's intuition, some of it's just innate knowledge, and then some of it has been like we've spent lots of money on education and self-development and personal development or professional development. But yeah, it's like, yeah.
And you were talking about your journey and how you're adapting your education and adapting all your knowledge. And, I think the underlining tone there is that you're actually putting in the action. You are taking the steps and learning from them when they didn't work, and then pivoting and adapting and like, okay, well, that method didn't work. It isn't because I suck. It isn't because I can't do it. It's because that wasn't the right avenue. Let's try something else. Let's try something else. Let's try something else. And it takes that kind of pivoting and embracing the change. And for a lot of people, that's really difficult. And, you started your fitness career, you didn't have a business degree at the time. Like you weren't coming fresh out of your MBA to start and open a business. Mm-hmm. And so many people will start a business and then go so hard on themselves. I don't realize I had to have that permit. I didn't realize I had to have this. I'm like, well, now, like, no, you can't. No one can know everything. And even people who have MBAs don't know what it's like to be an entrepreneur until you're in it. Just like Lynn said, if you're not in the water, how do you know what the temperature is? How do you know what the ground underneath you feels like? Is it gritty and sandy? Is it mushy and swamp-like? You don't know. What's crawling in there? You don't know until you get in there. And so a lot of that entrepreneurial spirit is being willing to adapt, because you're going to have to, and you can't possibly know everything. It is impossible. And if you think you know everything, you're just deluding yourself.
I'm laughing because when I first put together my projections, and I was going after getting investors for my first health club, because my mentor said, we'll help you, but crack open all your own money first, but we'll give you something to give you credibility, because I was having trouble getting a lease. And as a girl in their 20s with, no reputation. So, I mean, it took me 3 years to get my first lease for my first health club. And during that time, I mean, I worked my ass off talking to every club owner there was and figuring out what worked with it. And so when I presented my projections, I'll never forget it. Mike, Ed Snyder, who was the owner of the Flyers, took it and went, okay, that's great. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, most of that's not going to work out, but we just wanted to make sure you did your due diligence, and I'll give you the 8%. I was like, what? He goes, Sandy, come on. Everything you think's going to work out. Maybe 10% is, and that's business, but you have it in you to handle it and bob and weave. That was the most valuable lesson I ever had, because I realized that I wasn't a failure after the first year when I didn't reach my projections and my costs were way higher than I expected. And then I figured it out. Imagine after all those years, you're like, wait a minute, you're not going to just read them, please. He's like, yeah.
But I
You
love
did
that.
good.
There's such value in that in
Yeah.
your story. Um, we're coming close to end, so just a few more questions. I know you speak a lot about how to truly show up in this world, in your authenticity. And so I'd love for you to give our audience a couple of nuggets of, you know, how to show up in this world, how you get to choose how you show up.
So I have this saying, life doesn't happen to you, you happen to life. And every day I'm getting emotional over this saying. I don't know why. I say it all the time. Life doesn't happen to you, you happen to life. And you get to choose every single day how you show up in the world. And for me, every day before my feet hit the floor, I pick one word. One word on how do I want to show up? It could be with peace, because that's where I am, calm, depending on what you wake up, you're not every day going to be woohoo, pippy skippy. You might want ease and flow. Other days it's powerful, joyful. And I just breathe in and out for a few seconds. I don't want to cause anybody any extra time. I know your day's busy. And I think about that word, and that's what I'm going to embody to serve in the best way I can and give and receive. Then I come downstairs and I just write my word in my journal. And I do journal for a few minutes, thinking about how I want to show up that day, my power statement, and what I really want to get done. And then throughout my day, every hour, I have a few minute break and I reflect upon my word. And I just ask myself, am I coming from power, ease, and flow? And if not, what could I do to get back there? And then it could be just standing outside and breathing, hug a tree. I love trees, petting my dog or my 5 cats. I do a lot of dance resets. So I'm constantly dancing around the house, driving my family nuts. Little things that don't take extra time, but just it's you tuning into, wait a minute, I'm not feeling powerful. What could I do to get back there? I'm not feeling ease and flow. So if I could give anything to your audiences, that little thing would be mind-blowing if they did it every day.
Such simplicity. Amanda, what's the word that came to your mind before I share the word that came to mind?
Well, mine's not appropriate.
Oh.
I don't know how mine is. The word that came to mind was vicious.
Mine was like demon energy. I'm like, let's wake up the devil. Like, oh man, she's awake. Uh-oh.
I mean, we are like on a mission right now, Amanda and I. So we're about to relaunch some things and we're like in it deeply and like super determined. So I'm not surprised both of our words were kind of along that line, but such simplicity in what you shared, Sandy. We love applicable things, and that is so applicable to anyone, regardless if you're an entrepreneur, a 17-year-old who's still in high school listening to this. It doesn't matter, CEO, whatever it is. That's such a simple, beautiful way to absolutely have choice over how you show up in this world. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on our show today. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how they can reach out to you?
Sure. I'm on every social media platform. So whatever you have the most fun on, Sandy Joy Weston, Weston. They can also reach me on my website. Same thing, Sandy Joy Weston.
And of course, all of that will be in the show notes. Listen, if this resonated with you at all, make sure you are following Sandy and connecting with her. Drop us a like, a subscribe, give us a review, and start or keep the conversation going, because we would love to facilitate that conversation as well.
Absolutely. Sandy, thank you so much for being our guest today. It is, it's such a pleasure to meet. Amanda and I speak about this often. We are so lucky, although it didn't come by chance, we put in the work, but we are so lucky, kind of like you, same with your own podcast and your own show, to meet such wonderful, amazing people. And when we meet our people, and it's just been really incredible. So we're so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm excited where it's going to take us.
I know.
Absolutely.
So
And of course,
guys,
catch the TEDx. Make sure you're catching that TEDx. I will put that in the show notes as well, so that you guys can make sure you listen to that, because I can't wait. I'm going to get off this podcast and go straight to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And make sure that you're actually messaging Sandy too after you follow her. Tell her what you like the most about this podcast and share with somebody who needs to hear this wisdom, and share her TEDx. Let's get her those cajillion views, people. Come on. Help a sister out. Help a sister out. All right. I guess until next time, everybody.
Get after it.
Toodles.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadasserie.com.